Hey, glad to see you're back. What do you think of when I say advocacy? You hear the word on TV, in movies, and in the paper all the time. Child advocates, animal advocates, and environmental advocates are a couple of examples. During this lesson, we're going to discuss what advocacy is, ways you can advocate, and how to find out who you need to direct your advocacy skills toward. An advocate speaks out for a group or a cause and/or helps to empower an individual or group to speak up for themselves. The act of doing this is called advocacy. Advocacy can occur at multiple levels: local, regional, state, national, and worldwide. It focuses on making permanent change for improved outcomes. You can accomplish your advocacy goals several different ways. You may use verbal or written materials to advocate in situations such as the local school board or city council. If you go to the school board to represent a group of students asking for healthier foods in the cafeteria, then you would be advocating. These days, most groups use the media or the internet to get their information or view out to large groups of people at one time. What things have you seen on TV lately that are advocacy ads? How about the ads using popular athletes to encourage kids to go outside and be active? Or the ads talking about the importance of recycling? Many of the ads direct people to websites where they can provide additional materials about the cause. A designated website gives you more time and space to plead your case with photos, data, materials, and testimonials. You can also link to other places on the net that support your cause. If you plan to use this strategy, you need to make sure your message is presented in an appealing way, but is also truthful in the information presented. You need to be able to back up anything you put out there with reliable data. A website is not the only way you can use the internet to advocate your cause. YouTube, MySpace, Twitter, and Facebook are a couple of other resources that can be effectively used, especially if you're targeting teens and young adults. A final strategy we want to discuss is legislative advocacy. This is used when you want to affect policy or development. It's important to be familiar with your local representatives. Luckily, since we have the internet, you can get just about everything you would ever need online. What level of authority you need to start with will depend on your project or program. If, for example, you're working to change the menu in the cafeteria to more healthy fare, then you would logically start with the administration and the school board. But if you were working to change the dietary requirements set by the state for all schools, you would need to start with the Texas Education Agency and your local representative. If you're going to be working in the community, it's really best if you go ahead and do the research on who represents you at all levels. You can usually get local information at City Hall or the county seat. Depending on the size of the community, you may also be able to look online for this information. At the state level, you can look at the Texas Legislature online website. You can put in your zip code and it will tell you who represents you in the Texas House and Senate. Both sides of the legislature have websites that give you the information on the individual members as well as general information about the issues they are working on. You can find more personal information on the person who represents your area on their individual websites. You can find the contact information for both their Austin and local offices, usually the name of the staff in their office, and background info on the member themselves. You can look at their different information to see what they do while not in session. Are they a doctor, lawyer, rancher, or such? Affiliations, such as the Heart Association or the Methodist Church, family information, and most importantly, what type of legislation they have sponsored or supported in the past. Similar information can be found for your national representatives on the U.S. government website. Try to market your message to what you know is important to them. Legislators are people too, and like the rest of us, they view issues based on their experience and background. If they are bankers or sponsor lots of fiscal bills, then tailor your presentation to show how your cause is fiscally responsible. Likewise, if they come from a rural Texas background, express how your cause will affect the rural communities. You use this same principle on all levels of government. To make the most of the information you gather, you first need to understand the legislative process and governmental organizations. The site Texas Legislature Online has all kinds of features that help you learn about and follow the legislative process. You can look up the introduction of bills, legislative calendars, committees, and the status of current legislation. This information can be invaluable when you're working on behalf of a specific cause. You can look to see if the bill you're supporting, or for that matter opposing, has been submitted as a bill and who sponsored it. You can then watch for committee meetings and possibly public comment sessions. These allow you to provide information that supports your opinion or cause. Many times you can watch the discussion live on the internet if or when the bill reaches the floor. And finally, you can check to see how each of the legislators vote on each issue. One of the best parts is that you can access most of this information 24 hours a day, 7 days per week. This may seem overwhelming, but really it's pretty easy to register. You can even register to have the system notify you as bills go through the legislative process. It will alert you when any action is taken, including bill introduction, movement through committee, changes made to the bill, public hearings, and the final vote. All of this information can be accessed in writing by request. See, they weren't kidding when they told you it was important to learn Texas government and that you would use it again. How many times have you heard someone say their opinion doesn't really matter since they are only one person? Did you know that most legislators will tell you that they looked into any issue when they received 3 or more different people calling to support or oppose that issue? You need to reinforce to the groups or individuals you're working with that every vote counts. Take some time to research who represents your community at all levels of government. Use the sheet included in the workbook to document this information for your files. You never know when you may need it. Okay, before you start sending stuff, let's go over a few tips for corresponding with people in power. Included in the workbook is a valuable overview of the written and verbal protocol for addressing a member of the legislature. For instance, senators are addressed as Senator so-and-so, where you address members of the House as Representative so-and-so. There are also specific ways to address them when you send letters, emails, or faxes. This may all sound silly, but if you don't follow the established protocol, you may not be taken as seriously. Earlier, we talked about how a large number of political offices respond to an issue after hearing from 3 or more people from their voting community. You can also improve their response by remembering a couple of things. Although it may get their attention to see 100 colored postcards that say the same thing regarding an issue, but with different signatures, you will get more bang for your buck if you have people write individual support letters, especially if they have a personal story. For instance, your community is in danger of losing the local ER and the next closest ER is an hour away. Which do you think will get the biggest response? Sending 200 generic postcards saying the community supports the ER staying open? Or having 20 people send personal letters telling how the ER saved the life of one of their family members or themselves? The staff may remember getting 200 pink postcards, but they may not be able to tell you what they said. However, it's usually hard to forget reading stories about lives saved. It also helps to have a history with the local, state, or federal staff. Make sure to keep them informed if you're working on a project in your area. Let them know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how they can participate. You may get a staffer or someone from their office instead of the actual politician to attend a meeting or function. Any information they gather goes back to the office with them. If you're working on a specific cause, you may also offer to act as a resource for them if they need information regarding that topic. The last and possibly most important tips are to always follow up with them and make sure you converse and dress appropriately. Always write a thank you note if they've taken the time to meet with you or to attend an activity you're sponsoring, whether you invited them or not. Also, if they ask you for something or you offer to send them something, make sure you do so in a timely manner. The saying, "you only get one chance to make a first impression," is very true. Did you know that most people tend to remember the first 4 minutes they meet you forever? Don't think so? Think about one of your friends that you had to learn to like. You may have overcome your first impression, but I'll bet you still remember why you didn't like them when you first met. Whether it's written or verbal conversation, avoid slang words or words not everyone uses. Check your spelling and grammar, and focus on the facts of an issue. I would recommend having someone else read anything I was planning to send out to check for the things we just mentioned, but to also make sure the correspondence conveys the message you intended. Finally, whether you want to believe it or not, how you look can affect how your message is received. I'm not saying you have to wear a suit to talk to your mayor or representative, but you do need to be clean and presentable. Clothes need to be tidy looking with no holes, slogans, stains, etc., and should fit correctly. I would suggest maybe a pair of khakis and a nice button-down or polo with closed-toed shoes. Yes, I said it. No flip-flops unless you're a girl and they're sandals. Do your homework. If the person you're meeting with is conservative, you may also want to cover tattoos and remove visible body piercings. I know you may be thinking this is ridiculous and you should be able to wear what you want whenever you want. But the reality is, most people in positions of power are probably 20 years older than you are, and may have a very different view of what is acceptable. When you start to think this is just wrong, I can wear what I want, you need to stop and think, is the cause I am working for worth wearing khakis for a couple of hours? Advocacy doesn't just apply to people in power. You can be an advocate among your friends and family for healthier choices. By educating or exposing them to healthier alternatives, encouraging and supporting healthy changes, and helping to assess progress, you're playing a major role as a health advocate for those around you. Well, we have talked about what advocacy is and how you do it. Now you're fully prepared to go out and meet your community leadership or your neighbor down the street to make healthy changes on a big scale. Now please take a minute to show us what you've learned. After you successfully complete these questions, you'll be able to move on to the next lesson.